Clarke, how are some of these newer technologies now, like AI, connected and automated vehicles, wrong way detection, near miss analysis? How are these solutions kind of changing the ITS landscape today?
So AI isn't just a tool that I use to create fantasy football trash talk. It's something that is really becoming a more and more critical component of ITS infrastructure. So I've got some projects that I'm working on now where we're identifying what's happening at some intersections between driveways.
Did you know that artificial intelligence is now being used to spot traffic near misses before crashes even happen? For years, we've relied on cameras and message boards to manage our roads, but today, AI is predicting risks in real time and helping engineers design safer, smarter traffic systems. It's a shift that could transform how we think about mobility, safety, and project delivery in the transportation space. In today's episode, I'm joined by Clarke Chauvin. Clarke is a licensed professional engineer and senior project manager at Neal Schaefer. Clarke has built his career at the intersection of traffic engineering, project management, and intelligent transportation systems, or ITS. We'll talk about what ITS really is, how AI and other new tools are changing the field, and what project managers need to know about funding, outcomes, and common pitfalls. Whether you're an AEC leader, project manager, or engineer looking to stay ahead of the curve, this conversation will give you practical insights into how technology is reshaping the way we deliver transportation projects. Stick around. You won't want to miss the lessons that Clarke has to share. Now, before we jump in, I do want to let you know about our AEC PM Connect event, built for project managers who want to improve project delivery, communication, and leadership through practical sessions and tools. Our next event will be June 10th, 2026 at Forest Gate Country Club in New Jersey. These events provide an avenue to connect with leading PMs in the industry. Visit aecpmconnect.com and register today. I'm your host, Anthony Fasano, and this is the AEC Project Management Podcast. Let's jump in. All right, now I'd like to welcome my guest onto the show for today. Clarke Chauvin is a licensed professional engineer. He's also a senior project manager at Neal Schaefer. And Clarke, welcome to the AEC Project Management Podcast.
Thank you for having me, Anthony.
So happy to have you, Clarke. Looking forward to jumping into some interesting topics. And let's kind of start right off. And I want to ask you about how you got started in intelligent transportation systems, or ITS, which is what we're going to talk a lot about today.
Sure. So, I mean, it's a pretty niche field, right? It's a subset of traffic, which is a subset of transportation, which is a subset of civil, And I just kind of knew a guy who knew a guy and ended up doing some ITS work. That's how networking goes, right? And it turned out I loved it, right? It's all the technology that's associated with the roadways. It's finding ways to use our roads, our existing infrastructure more efficiently, and get the best bang for the buck for our municipal clients, our state organizations, and everybody trying to get us from A to B safely.
That's great. And if someone were to ask you, I'm not familiar, what is ITS? How would you define it?
ETS is short for Intelligent Transportation Systems, and it is all of the communications, detection, video, message signs, everything you see along the roadway and plenty that you don't, that helps move traffic from one point to another in the most safe and efficient way possible.
That's great. And how have some of these traditional ITS tools like the CCTV, the dynamic message signs, the traffic management centers, how have they kind of shaped traffic operations to date? What have they done for us so far?
So it's been huge, actually. FHWA put out a report not that long ago about how first responder incidents to wrecks on the roadway are reducing the downtime and reducing the severity and opportunity of secondary crashes just for getting these wrecks cleared out sooner and quicker. So things like CCTVs allowing us to identify roadway incidents sooner and coordinate with emergency personnel quicker and get things off the roadway, get accidents cleared, has allowed us to create a safer roadway for everybody and a more efficient roadway as well.
That's awesome. So Clark, how are some of these newer technologies now, like AI, connected and automated vehicles, wrong way detection, near miss analysis? How are these solutions kind of changing the ITS landscape today?
It's been huge. In fact, every conference I go to, it's a lot of the same buzzwords, right? So AI isn't just a tool that I use to create fantasy football trash talk pictures with my group. It's something that is really becoming a more and more critical component of ITS infrastructure. So I've got some projects that I'm working on now where we're identifying what's happening at some intersections between driveways or at intersections of roadways to try to really identify what the problems are and how we can find solutions that actually match those problems instead of trying to apply a blanket solution, which may or may not have fixed the problem, which has kind of been the prerogative in the past, where you go, this is a tool we have, we think it might work. Now we can really narrow down those solutions and find the best application for each one.
In the AEC industry, skilled project managers are the backbone of success. EMI's AEC PM certification offers tailored training, ongoing support, and exclusive access to premium content that keeps your team sharp and effective. From foundational training to advanced leadership tools, set your team apart with certified growth. Learn more at aecpm.com. That's aecpm.com. That's great. And, one of the things that, we always want to think about on our projects is, how can you functionally use these new tools or some of these exciting new benefits coming down the road. So, from a technical perspective, what does ITS rely on to function effectively? And, what challenges maybe do agencies face in ensuring that these systems can work together seamlessly?
Sure. So, I mean, communication is huge, right? All these different devices need to talk to each other. A lot of times they're developed in a way to talk to each other, which is supremely helpful. But oftentimes they're not. And oftentimes you have to find workarounds in order to get maybe a detection system communicate to a flasher relay or something where it was not intentionally developed for, or there may not be a built in communication protocol between the two devices. So, in addition to having not just good communication, but reliable communication that is accessible 24/7, that can provide these alerts to your emergency responders, provide alerts to your management centers that are monitoring the traffic incidents, they have to find ways to work more efficiently, right? So, the infrastructure that's out there now is overwhelmed, right? So as we're developing, we're putting more and more fiber in places. We're putting more and more communications out there in preparation for the full build outs of all these different agencies' systems. But in the meantime, we're having to find ways with AI, with edge computing devices, to really minimize the bandwidth requirements on the system in order to do more with less.
That's great. And I guess just maybe to go a little bit deeper on that, because, this is a project management podcast, which means we're certainly going to have some project managers listening that aren't ITS experts, but they might have ITS on their projects. So, for someone who maybe is a civil engineer, but not practicing in traffic or even an architect or whatever the case may be, what would you recommend that they can do to learn enough about ITS to be able to have some knowledge around it, to communicate with the ITS professionals on their project team? What can you offer them?
That's a really good question. I would say ask questions. Everybody that I've talked to in the ITS field, like I said, it's a very small subset field, but everybody's really excited about it, right? So when you start talking to people in this industry, everybody is just willing to share. So listen to the people around you, right? So you're going to ask questions. That's a big one for me and my clients, especially being involved in all these different project management phases from planning all the way to construction through operations and maintenance. They don't know everything about ITS. And I wouldn't expect them to, right? Because they have all kinds of different disciplines that they're trying to manage and understand and operate at the same time. So they look to people in the ITS professional with expertise, and in order to provide them the right recommendations to develop their system properly. So I would say it comes down to trust, right?
Yeah.
That's how I have to develop business if I have to lead my clients in the correct direction. They count on me.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I think the one thing about project managers in general is that we want to deliver maximum value for our client, whether it's a private company, a public organization, or agency, right? And whether that means you personally or you bringing the right people to a meeting, right? An ITS expert, let's say, to be able to talk about some of the benefits that the system may be able to deploy on their roadway project or whatever the case may be. So I think that that's a big piece of project management, which is you're not going to be the expert in everything, but you're going to want to make sure you have the right knowledge or the right experts to help you to deliver that message. And ITS, for example, could be something that could really provide a lot of benefits to your client. And you just have to find the right way to deliver that message to them, which I think is a big part of project management. So, Clarke, talk a little bit about ITS deployments today and what they can do in terms of safety, mobility, equity, and like how do we measure some of these improvements on these projects? That's what people want to know, right? Like, hey, this all sounds great, ITS, AI stuff. How do we measure it? How do we see the real impacts?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, everybody's going to say, do my thing. It's the next best thing. It's going to get you everything you ever want. But when it comes down to it, you really need to be able to quantify those improvements, right? So, for instance, one of my first tastes of ITS was working with adaptive traffic signals out in Lake Charles, Louisiana. And something we were able to do was deploy some travel time Bluetooth detectors ahead of the project. So we identified what the travel patterns looked like before the project. And then after implementing this adaptive traffic signal system, we were then able to quantify how much improvement we made. And in some corridors, it reduced travel times by over 30%, which for something where you're not changing the number of lanes on a road is huge, right? If you could tell me on the interstate during peak hours, you could reduce people's travel time by 30%, people would be going crazy right now. They'd go, we don't need another lane of traffic. We don't need to spend millions and millions of dollars on this infrastructure when we can just put in some technology. That'd be huge.
Yeah, that's a great example. And I think that that is a real example that you could show to a client or a prospective client, or you're doing a presentation at a conference, right? A technical conference, and you could really show some of the benefits, which I think is really nice because I know in our line of business, we do a lot of course, project management development and training. You know, we've worked with Clark's firm on some programs and stuff. And it is always hard, like for someone to say, how do you measure, the success of your training or your programs, right? But in this case, or the example that you gave, I mean, there's some real tangible results there, right? Reducing someone's commute time, let's say by X amount of minutes or time every day. I mean, that's a really huge impact to the community, and that's awesome. So that's another thing as a project manager, understanding the right metrics or measurements that you're able to show your clients or your team members to show that there's a real return on the investment here. Because I think at the end of the day, when you think about infrastructure, people are looking for a return on their investment, whether it is an agency or a private company. And it sounds like Clarke ITS system can maybe provide some real tangible measurements.
Yeah. In fact, FHWA put out some statistics not that long ago. I've put it in a couple presentations, but of all the different transportation related disciplines out there, ITS was by and large the biggest return on investment for both safety and efficiency with providing benefit to the cost of the systems.
Wow, that's great. And that's great to have in your back pocket, of course, when you're having
Yeah.
conversations with people or just talking about projects and things of that nature. All right, so let's talk about something that we always need to think about on our projects, which is funding, right? Funding is often a hurdle on transportation projects. What funding sources are available for ITS, whether they're federal, state, local, or grants, and how can project managers kind of access those?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of different methods, like you're saying. A lot of state agencies, DOTs, will have funding allocated specifically for ITS related projects, but in many cases, people are looking for those funds. In those cases, there's also grant opportunities from the federal government, right? You can look at deploying new technologies that will also provide safety features, and there's funds related to safety components that you can go after. There's funds related to reducing emissions through the improved efficiency of corridors that you can go after. There's a lot of different things out there specifically focused on technology improvements that you can go after for ITS infrastructure. So there's really a lot of opportunity out there, especially today.
And that's another, I think, just opportunity in general for organizations out there today is understanding kind of the lay of the land when it comes to funding and grants and what's available. Some of what Clark just gave you examples of, because again, as a project manager, as an organization, if you can say to your client, hey, there's this new grant available for XYZ, we'd love to help you to try to get that for your highway or whatever the case may be. I mean, they're going to love that, right? So I think that ITS is one function of a benefit you could deliver to a client, but knowing about the funding and being able to make people aware of that and helping your clients through that process is another big opportunity for us on projects today. And that also speaks to this idea of building relationships with your clients, right? Because the hope is, and I know this is the case for Neil Schaefer, most organizations rely heavily on repeat business, right? You want clients coming back. You want, whether they're private or public, you want them coming back. And when you establish that relationship and you understand the needs that they have beyond this one roadway or whatever the case may be, now you have an opportunity to kind of match them up with some of the needs and goals and things that they can do. And so I think that that's an important point when you think about funding, not just for ITS, but just in general, knowing what's out there really.
Yeah, absolutely. And knowing your client, like you were talking on there a second ago, I'm working on a project right now where a client came to us and they said, "Hey, we're having issues with our driveway with some vehicles pulling in and out. We get a lot of large trucks come through here, but we've also got some safety concerns." And they're like, "Well, Clark, why don't you go talk to them and see what we can do out there?" And it turns out that they've got a lot of speeding on the road in front of their driveway, and they're trying to find ways that their personnel can enter and exit this roadway safely. So we're working with them to develop a lot of new applications of some existing AI technology, actually. And I think both the vendors and manufacturers that we're working with, as well as the client, are excited about this opportunity to use new technology in new ways and identify what's the root cause of the issues at this driveway and what's the best thing that can be done to improve the safety.
That's great. And what I really like about that is that's pretty much a typical situation where you have a client that has a problem or a challenge, right? And they're reaching out to you as kind of that trusted advisor to say, hey, we've got an issue here. We might have some safety concerns. How can you help us, right? And I think as a consultant or a project manager, architect, engineer, you want to be able to go out there and have an intelligent conversation with your client about some of the different things that we can bring to the table here to solve your problem. I mean, at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to accomplish. And obviously, with all of the different tools out there today, there are a lot of potential solutions. So, I think it goes back to what I said earlier by being well rounded as a project manager, right? And, an organization like Neil Schaefer, you have a lot of different people in that organization. So if it's not something that you can handle, knowing that you can reach out to someone else in your organization, right, and bring them to the table is another big possibility. One other thing I wanted to ask about, Clark, and on your projects, do you find that you're doing projects, and maybe it's a combination, but some projects where the project is basically ITS and maybe installing it, working with it, or other projects where it's a larger project and your ITS component is like one component of a larger project? Do you deal with both of those at Neil Schaefer?
Absolutely. Yeah. Because ITS is such a small field, it's often an add-on to other larger projects, but there are also exclusive projects that will just implement ITS projects on its own. So very much hand in hand, both of those.
That's great. So in some situations where ITS is part of a larger project, you do kind of have that project manager, let's say, that you need to support and educate to whatever needs necessary or help them or attend a meeting with them to try to help them through the ITS information.
Yeah, absolutely. And early in my career, I did a little bit road design. I did some drainage. I've done a little bit of the other disciplines as well, very, very early on. And so when I have the discussions with them, I understand when something can be moved and when it can't be moved, and when ITS, which is typically the more flexible of the disciplines whenever laying out a construction project, has to go around these other things. And we find a way to implement it where it's going to work through all different phases of construction, because that's a pretty big one too. Is the construction doesn't happen all at once, right? So you may have to build some lanes here temporarily and move traffic over so you can reconstruct something here, but you want the final ITS project, which often gets implemented at the beginning of a project so that communications can stay online and everything can stay up and operational during the project, how it doesn't have any conflicts during any phases of that construction project. So they can often be a moving target, but it's a fun challenge.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting. And the other thing I'll say is if you're listening to this and you are a project manager at a company that maybe does do some roadway type of work and you don't have ITS within your organization, it's probably something that you want to think about whether you're subbing it out or finding someone else that can do that, because it's obvious from some of the stuff that Clarke has taken us through today is that it can be a massive benefit to the end user, right? To the client because of everything that it can, all the safety benefits and other benefits out there. And I know you mentioned earlier the FHWA, and I believe that they have some data around some of these safety improvements as well as the cost benefit outcomes. Is that correct, Clark?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so they put information out there regularly.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's great. And so again, you're going to need to make a case for things like this usually, right? Because they cost money.
Yeah.
And the more data that you can get out there, and it sounds like there is more data being built on ITS and what the success that you've had, that's going to help that's just going to make your job easier to try to sell ITS because it is very beneficial. But again, people don't necessarily take your word for it, right? They want to see the data. And it sounds like there's a good amount of data out there at this point.
Yeah, fortunately, ITS discipline is a very data focused field, right? So we're putting out a lot of technology, and that technology is all creating data and it's creating information that's used in the planning of not just future ITS projects and future ITS services, but transportation as a whole. So it's really been helpful in identifying the benefits of these ITS deployments and then expressing that to any clients that we're looking at or discussing with, or just people in the industry that want to know more.
Yeah, that's great. Last question on ITS before I wrap up with a PM question. What for you, like what do you think is the most exciting kind of opportunities and possibilities that are coming with ITS of just some of the things you've heard about or some of the things that you've seen?
That's a very good question. So I mean, well, like I said, we keep talking about AI and we are just only scratching the surface here. It's not something that I foresee is going to replace people, but it's going to allow us to use people in a much, much more efficient way. Like I mentioned before, that stat about the roadside vehicles in an incident, right? So could you imagine if instead of waiting for these vehicles to happen, we could identify just something as simple as a slowdown, and it deploys a drone and goes, and we immediately see this location that maybe doesn't have any CCT coverage, or everybody's driving around with their Waze app, with their Google's map. As you drive by road debris, you see that little pop-up
Right.
now, right? That's a connected vehicle application that says, hey, is this still here? Is this something that needs to be cleared off? And that information is going to your state agencies. They're getting these types of information and they're using that to more efficiently coordinate their debris removal teams and clear the roadways and make it safer for everybody. So I would say that's the biggest thing, is we're just scratching the surface now on what AI can do and how it can help. And it's only going to get more efficient.
That's great. And when you work in a field like this where it is very technology heavy, like ITS, what are some things that you do as a project manager to stay up to date on like the latest? Like how do you keep yourself educated?
Yeah, it's a lot of reading, right? So, I mean, there's a lot going on the news constantly with AI, but there's a lot in the industry as well. A board member of an organization, the Gulf Region Intelligent Transportation Society, and through that, I meet a lot of different people in the industry. I meet a lot of different vendors in the industry, and I'm always interested in communicating with them about what the latest thing out there is that they're working on. Maybe it's not even to market yet, but we want to get ahead of it. We want to understand its benefits and how it can be used to help support our clients. So, communication again.
Yeah, communication. It sounds like getting out there too, right? Going to events, meeting people in the industry, going to conferences, and just taking in what you can.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's great. All right. My last question I have for you, Clark, we call it the PM pitfalls question. In your work as a project manager, what would you say is kind of the biggest project management pitfall that you've seen on the projects you've worked on? And any recommendations for either avoiding it, overcoming it, dealing with it as a project manager?
I would say maybe it's on the design side, right? So, a lot of engineers will start off their career in the office and they'll stay in the office throughout their career. And when I first started out, I did a lot of field work. And before that, I had a very large background of building houses and very hands on my entire life. So, understanding drawings and understanding how things go together has been a huge benefit to me, I feel like, and allowed me to develop plans that are constructible. I've gone to develop and construct plans that I've seen before, and you go, "Whoa, this says it's one thing and this says it's another thing. How can you overlook that?" But if you've never been in the field and looked at an apple and an orange, it's just a fruit on paper. So getting out there and actually getting your hands dirty, I think, is a real good component to the development of an engineer, and develops their design skills in a much more cohesive and holistic way.
That's great. Good stuff. Well, once again, we're really happy to get the chance today to talk with Clarke Chauvin. Clarke is a licensed professional engineer, senior project manager at Neal Schaefer. Clarke, thanks so much for taking us kind of into the world of ITS and how project managers can, how it can help their projects, how they can educate themselves around it, and all the exciting opportunities with it in the future. We really appreciate the time.
Thank you for the opportunity. I'm always happy to introduce new people to ITS.
Thanks, Clarke. I hope you enjoyed this episode of the AEC PM podcast. Please remember you can subscribe to our channel here as we put out videos like this on a regular basis to help engineers become better project managers and leaders. We'll see you next time on the AEC PM podcast.